Hare Krishna. Okay, so we're going to pick up where we left off from last time at chapter 8. We're going to start at text 6. Yam yam vapi smaran bhavam tya jati antikalevaram tam tami vaiti kuntiya sadatad bhava bhavitaha. Synonyms: yam yam, whatever, va api, at all, smaran, remembering, bhavam, nature, tyajati, gives up, anti, at the end, kalevaram, this body, tam tam, similar, eva, certainly, eti, gets, kuntiyaha, O son of Kunti, sada, always, tat, that, bhava, state of being, bhavitaha, remembering. Translation: whatever state of being one remembers when he quits his body, O son of Kunti, that state he will attain without fail. Purport: the process of changing one's nature at the critical moment of death is here explained. A person who at the end of his life quits his body thinking of Krishna attains the transcendental nature of the Supreme Lord. But it is not true that a person who thinks of something other than Krishna attains the same transcendental state. This is a point we should note very carefully. How can one die in the proper state of mind? Maharaj Bharata, although a great personality, thought of a deer at the end of his life, and so in his next life he was transferred into the body of a deer. Although as a deer he remembered his past activities, he had to accept that animal body. Of course, one's thoughts during the course of one's life accumulate to influence one's thoughts at the moment of death, so this life creates one's next life. If in one's present life one lives in the mode of goodness and always thinks of Krishna, it is possible for one to remember Krishna at the end of one's life. That will help one be transferred to the transcendental nature of Krishna. If one is transcendently absorbed in Krishna's service, then his next body will be transcendental, or spiritual, not material. Therefore, the chanting of Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, is the best process for successfully changing one's state of being at the end of one's life. Chapter 8, Text 7. Tasmat sarveshu kaleshu mam anusmara yudhya cha mayi arpita mano buddhir mam evasyasya asmam sayaha. Synonyms: tasmat, therefore, sarveshu, at all, kaleshu, times, mam, me, anusmara, go, on remembering, yudhya, fight, cha, also, mayi, unto me, arpita, surrendering, manaha, mind, buddhihi, intellect, mam, unto me, eva, surely, esyasi, you will attain, asamsayaha, beyond a doubt. Translation: therefore, Arjuna, you should always think of me in the form of Krishna, and at the same time carry out your prescribed duty of fighting. With your activities dedicated to me, and your mind and intelligence fixed on me, you will attain me without doubt. Purport: this instruction to Arjuna is very important for all men engaged in material activities. The Lord does not say that one should give up his prescribed duties or engagements. One can continue them and at the same time think of Krishna by chanting Hare Krishna. This will free one from material contamination and engage the mind and intelligence in Krishna. By chanting Krishna's names, one will be transferred to the supreme planet Krishnaloka without a doubt. Chapter 8, Text 8. Abhyasa yoga yuktena chitasa nanya gamina paramam purusham devyam yati partanu chityan. Synonyms: abhyasa yoga, by practice, yuktena, being engaged in meditation, chetasa, by the mind and intelligence, na anya gamina, without here being deviated, paramam, the supreme, purusham, personality of Godhead, divyam, transcendental, yati, one achieves, partha, O son of Prita, anuchinta, chintayan, constantly thinking of. Translation: he who meditates on me as the supreme personality of Godhead, his mind constantly engaged in remembering me, undeviated from the path, he, O Partha, is sure to reach me. Purport: in this verse, Lord Krishna stresses the importance of remembering him. One's memory of Krishna is revived by chanting the Mahamantra, Hare Krishna. By this practice of chanting and hearing the sound and vibration of the Supreme Lord, one's ear, tongue, and mind are engaged. This mystic meditation is very easy to practice, and it helps one attain the Supreme Lord. Purusham means enjoyer. Although living entities belong to the marginal energy of the Supreme Lord, they are in material contamination. They think themselves enjoyers, but they are not the Supreme Enjoyer. Here it is clearly stated that the Supreme Enjoyer is the Supreme Personality of Godhead in his different manifestations and plenary expansions as Narayana, Vasudeva, etc. The devotee can constantly think of the object of worship, the Supreme Lord, in any of his features, Narayana, Krishna, Rama, etc., by chanting Hare Krishna. This practice will purify him, and at the end of his life, due to his constant chanting, he will be transferred to the kingdom of God. Yoga practice is meditation on the Supersoul within. Similarly, by chanting Hare Krishna, one fixes his mind always on the Supreme Lord. The mind is fickle, and therefore it is necessary to engage the mind by force to think of Krishna. One example often given is that of the caterpillar that thinks of becoming a butterfly, and so is transformed into a butterfly in the same life. Similarly, if we constantly think of Krishna, it is certain that at the end of our lives we shall have the same bodily constitution as Krishna. Chapter 8, Text 9. Kavim Puranam Anusasitaram Anu Aniyam Sam Anusmaredyaha Sarvasya Dataram Achintya Rupam Aditya Varnam Tamasaha Parastat. Synonyms: Kavim, the one who knows everything; Puranam, the oldest; Anusasitaram, the controller; Anuoha, then the atom; Ani Yamsam, smaller; Anusmaret, always thinks of; Yaha, one who; Sarvasya, of everything; Tataram, the maintainer; Achintya, inconceivable; Rupam, whose form; Aditya Varnam, luminous like the sun; Tamasaha, to darkness; Parastat, transcendental. Translation: one who should meditate upon the Supreme Person as the one who knows everything, as he who is the oldest, who is the controller, who is smaller than the smallest, who is the maintainer of everything, who is beyond all material conception, who is inconceivable, and who is always a person. He is luminous like the sun, and he is transcendental beyond this material nature. Purport: the process of thinking of the Supreme is mentioned in this verse. The foremost point is that he is not impersonal or void. One cannot meditate on something impersonal or void. That is very difficult. The process of thinking of Krishna, however, is very easy, and is factually stated herein. First of all, the Lord is Purusha, a person. We think of the person Rama and the person Krishna, and whether one thinks of Rama or of Krishna, what he is like is described in this verse of Bhagavad Gita. The Lord is Kavi, that is, he knows past, present, and future, and therefore knows everything. He is the oldest personality because he is the origin of everything. Everything is born out of him. He is also the supreme controller of the universe, and he is the maintainer and instructor of humanity. He is smaller than the smallest. The living entity is 1/10,000th part of the tip of a hair, but the Lord is so inconceivably small that he enters into the heart of this particle. Therefore he is called smaller than the smallest. As the Supreme, he can enter into the atom and into the heart of the smallest and control him as the Supersoul. Although so small, he is still all-pervading and is maintaining everything. By him, all these planetary systems are sustained. We often wonder how these big planets are floating in the air. It is stated here that the Supreme Lord, by his inconceivable energy, is sustaining all these big planets and systems of galaxies. The word achintya, inconceivable, is very significant in this connection. God's energy is beyond our conception, beyond our thinking jurisdiction, and is therefore called inconceivable, achintya. Who can argue this point? He pervades this material world, and yet is beyond it. We cannot comprehend even this material world, which is insignificant compared to the spiritual world. So how can we comprehend what is beyond? Achintya means that which is beyond this material world, that which our argument, logic, and philosophical speculation cannot touch, that which is inconceivable. Therefore, intelligent persons avoiding useless argument and speculation should accept what is stated in scriptures, like the Vedas, Bhagavad Gita, and Srimad Bhagavatam, and follow the principles they set down. This will lead one to understanding. Chapter 8, Text 10. Prayanakali manasa chalena bhaktya yukto yogo balena chaiva Pruvorya madhe pranam avasya samyak satam param purusham upate divyam. Synonyms: Prayana Kali, at the time of death; Manasa, by the mind; Achalena, without its being deviated; Bhaktya, in full devotion; Yuktaha, engaged; Yoga Balena, by the power of mystic yoga; Cha, also; Eva, certainly; Ruvoha, the two eyebrows; Madhi, between; Pranam, the life air; Avesya, establishing; Samyak, completely; Saha, he; Tam, that; Param, transcendental; Purusham, personality of Godhead; Upati, achieves; Divyam, in the spiritual kingdom. Translation: one who at the time of death fixes his life air between the eyebrows, and by the strength of yoga, with an undeviating mind, engages himself in remembering the Supreme Lord in full devotion, will certainly attain to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Purport: in this verse, it is clearly stated that at the time of death the mind must be fixed in devotion to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. For those practiced in yoga, it is recommended that they raise the life force between the eyebrows to the Ajna chakra. The practice of Sat Chakra Yoga, involving meditation on the 6 chakras, is suggested here. A pure devotee does not practice such yoga, but because he is always engaged in Krishna consciousness, at death he can remember the Supreme Personality of Godhead by his grace. This is explained in verse 14. The particular use of the word yoga balena is significant in this verse, because without practice of yoga, whether Sat Chakra Yoga or Bhakti Yoga, one cannot come to this transcendental state of being at the time of death. One cannot suddenly remember the Supreme Lord at death. One must have practiced some yoga system, especially the system of Bhakti Yoga. Since one's mind at death is very disturbed, one should practice transcendence through yoga during one's life. And that will end today. Hare Krishna.